Thank y'all for being here, first of all. Really appreciate McMinn County for having me. It's a beautiful place, ain't it? I mean, good grief. I couldn't really tell where it was driving up on it, but I love it. Beautiful place. And thank y'all for being here. Hopefully there's some food left because we're gonna be hungry afterward because we got a lot of truth to tell. Also, thank you to my wife, Miss Nay Logan, because she put all this together. You know, I'm just showing up, talking, but she did all the behind the scenes stuff, everything. So round of applause for her. So I look forward to getting to know all you guys. You know, I'm not here on a weird mission because some people that claim to be conservative Republicans, they come and speak. And when you hear them speak, it's like, I don't know if I really agree with that. That's kind of not really conservative, but trust and believe. I'm a conservative through and through. This is about Juneteenth. You may have seen it on the news and whatnot. You might not know what it is. If that's you, that's okay, that's fine. I'm here to educate without any kind of judgment. Now, this right here, just for reference, so I don't go too far off in the weeds, because I can't do that. I could talk for about 10 minutes and then I'm way off. So I'm just going to refer to this just to make sure I'm straight, all right? Now, all right. So like I said, you may have seen Juneteenth pop up a little bit on television. It's a federal holiday now, so it's work for the federal government. You may have been able to get off yesterday. And people don't really know what it is. You know, I'm watching the news and I'm seeing guys like, who was that, Geraldo? He got on Fox and said Juneteenth is when the Emancipation was signed. It's like, no, that's not when it was signed. It was signed actually on my birthday, September 22nd, 1862. Yes. Went into effect, there you go. Went into effect January 1st, 1863. Juneteenth was June 19th, 1865. Okay, so some slaves got free at that point, but they had been free for a full 2.5 years. That's why it's important. But that's not where the story ends. There's a whole lot more to it. There's a whole lot of context and there's a whole lot more to it. Now, like I said, that's the general version. Some slaves were freed on that day, but it's a symbolic representation of the end of the slavery. Slavery actually ended when they passed 13th Amendment in December of 1865. And interestingly enough, the two states that were forced to free their slaves when that passed in December were both in the Union. Some people say, oh, well, it was the North versus the South over slavery. Yes, that was part of it, but the Union also had their slaves. So when you see stuff on television, when you see some of these people get on there and say things like that, you have ammunition to fight back and say, that's not true. Let's talk about what really happened. And that's what Juneteenth should be from my point of view. What really happened, what's really going on. True history, not anything woke or, how can I say, just manipulated by the left. Now, before I get too deep into it, I'm gonna tell you a little bit more about me, just so you know. And Todd told you a little bit, I was born in West Virginia, raised in Virginia Beach, that area. But West Virginia, that's where my roots are. Both sides of my family were from West Virginia. Very small town called Rand, West Virginia. You guys watch football, you know Randy Moss? Anybody? Yeah, that's where he's from. There's actually a documentary on ESPN called 30 for 30 Rand University. That's where I was born. So this is a really interesting area. West Virginia is about, I'd say 95% white. Rand is a majority or near majority black town in a mostly white area. So very interesting, and I come from that. In this area, it doesn't matter if you're black, white, whatever you are, we're all neighbors, we're all as one. We all look out for each other. There was one story where my grandmother, there were some guys on the front door trying to break in. And across the street, the neighbors, they're white, doesn't really matter. They open their blinds real wide and say, hey, we see you, sir. Get off of, Miss Porch. That's how we are in Rand. So that's the kind of values I grew up with. Now, we didn't stay in Rand for too long. We moved to like Virginia Beach, Norfolk. So you go from a real country area. My dad had he called it a mobile home. I call it a trailer. He had a mobile home of land that he owned. We moved from that kind of country, kind of rural, something like this, up into a more, urban area, straight to the ghetto in a trailer park, which is what it was. So I have the country, more traditional values mixed with some of that urban stuff. That's why I'm the way I am. And like Todd said, I grew up pretty politically liberal, but my parents, very conservative. West Virginia, going to church every day. That's how they grew up. No cursing. I go to friends' houses And I would see some of these kids curse in front of their parents. I'm like, you can do that, really? Without getting popped in your head? Like, I was totally amazed. So a lot of the politically liberal stuff was just because we didn't really know any better about voting. But the socially conservative stuff, that's what I always had growing up. And Juneteenth kind of ties in here because today is actually my dad's birthday. And also his uncle, my granduncle's birthday. My uncle would be 89 and my dad would be 62. They both passed away last year. So this day is very important. Normally what I would do, if they were still here, I would go to DC where my granduncle lived and celebrate Juneteenth, Father's Day, birthday, family reunion, all of that as one. And every year when I would go to DC, especially when I was a little kid, I'd be riding with Dad. And it didn't matter how many times he told me the story. It didn't matter how many times I told him what I knew. He would always ask me, hey son, what you know about Juneteenth? And it didn't really matter what my answer was because he was going to tell me the full story again every single year. So I heard this whole story throughout my entire life growing up, 30 years, 35 years, every year. So it got to the point where I'm like, okay, you keep challenging me basically because at this point it's a challenge. You're trying to give me a pop quiz on the road on a 3.5-hour trip from Norfolk to DC. So then I began to do my own research. I looked into it very deeply and I researched other things as well. Let's talk about the founding of the nation, 1776, let's talk about the war and the revolution. Now, I kind of went a little bit deep, and I'm not sure if Dad liked that part when I became conservative, but that's okay. He gave me the tools I needed to be able to do research for myself. This is why I know so much about Juneteenth. Now, let me get to where I was here. Okay, now Juneteenth, to get into it, what happened was this. Gordon Granger, great Union general, he went to Galveston, Texas with Union soldiers. And the purpose was to inform and enforce the ending of slavery. Because back then, 1865, there's no cell phones, there's no internet. You can't just pop up a big sign on the billboard that says, hey, everything's over now, go home, no more slavery. You couldn't really do that. Even if you could send a kite or a pigeon or a Pony Express or whatever to inform people, you have to enforce it because they may say, you know what, we don't want to end slavery. Slavery's still going on, that's what it's going to be. So they went down there to enforce it with soldiers. So it wasn't a choice. It's like, you're going to free these slaves right now today. And that day was June 19th, 1865. They had been free for 2.5 years prior because of their emancipation, but they didn't know. So that day became very well known in Galveston, Texas as Juneteenth. June 19th, put it together, Juneteenth. And it also spread throughout Texas as a holiday. It's very well known in Texas. Not so much outside of it. It kind of spread out a little bit after civil rights to other parts of the country, but it's kind of an obscure holiday, quite frankly. It's like maybe celebrated a little bit less than Kwanzaa, and Kwanzaa, that's not really a real day. That's kind of like a Hanukkah ripoff, but I'm gonna go down that road, so I'll move on. Juneteenth is a real day. It's a real day, and it's celebrated kind of obscure. We always did it because, like I said, Dad's birthday, his uncle's birthday, Father's Day, all of that. We always celebrated it. But for the most part, like I said, I was living in Rand. This is a mostly black area. I moved to an urban area, 80-90% black. I lived in black areas pretty much all my life, and nobody really celebrated it. But now all of a sudden you hear about it. Now all of a sudden it's a big thing. And if you don't know about it, somehow you're a racist. I'm not sure how that makes any sense when people that go on TV don't know exactly what it is. Like I said, Geraldo said, the emancipation was signed. Joe Biden said that you had the Tulsa riots that happened on Juneteenth. It's like, no. Okay, the Tulsa riot, they call it a massacre now because they wouldn't weaponize it. I'll talk about that a little bit later, weaponizing. Tulsa happened on May 31st to June 1st, 1921 in Tulsa, Oklahoma. Juneteenth was June 19th, 1865 in Galveston, Texas. That's not anywhere in the same time period, not anywhere in the same area. So people are just wrong when they say it. And like I said, I'm here to provide education. People just don't know, and it's fine. This is a good day in history to understand and to really know about. Now, let me get back to where I am. Now, speaking about Juneteenth, it's a federal holiday now, and it's great. But what I want to see is it go back to what it was. What we always did on Juneteenth was have a cookout, just like this, barbecue, friends, family get together. It was never a commercial holiday, nor is it an affront to July 4th, 1776, Independence Day. So when they named it Juneteenth, National Independence Day, I was like, nah, just call it what it was. Throughout history, throughout time, Juneteenth. Never have I heard people say Juneteenth, National Independence Day. That was never it, just call it Juneteenth. So now they're kind of mixing it together. I'm not really a big fan of that. And I think that most people shouldn't be. And like I said, I prefer when it was very small. Gathering just like this is perfect, but the national attention, not really my thing. I'm seeing flyers with people on it. It don't make any sense. People come straight from Ireland talking about Juneteenth. It's like, okay, what are we actually doing? It's kind of weird. So, and I want to address something else. Some people say that celebrating the 4th of July, that's somehow a wrong thing. That's somehow racist. But no, July 4th, 1776, what that's about is the beginning of our nation. Okay? And no nation on planet Earth is perfect or was perfect back then. But it's about the progression. It's about getting better. It's about having milestones. Okay, 1776, you have your independence from the Kingdom of Great Britain. Okay, you have Juneteenth. That is symbolic of the ending of slavery, although it did end right there, but it's symbolic. You have a bunch of different milestones, civil rights, all of that we experience as a nation. We should celebrate that. So it's not a matter of what day should you celebrate or not. It's about celebrating American history all together. So that's pretty much what it is. I want to thank y'all for listening, for being open-minded, because I put myself in your shoes. You may see a person talking about Juneteenth and you hear what you see on the news and you're like, well, man, what is this going to be? Is it going to be more what I see on the news, more of the fighting? No, I'm all about education. I'm all about information. So that's pretty much what I have to say. If anyone has any questions, y'all let me know. Thank you. All right.
First of all, thank you. I'm the sheriff here in the county, but I'm also the county historian. We really appreciate you touching on so many things about history and drawing on those resources that really tell the truth about how things work. I'll make a quick point just for the crowd and for you. You mentioned about how there was still slavery in the United States.
Yes.
So McMinn County in 1860 had the second highest slave population in East Tennessee.
Wow.
We voted 2-1 to remain with the Union. So we were very much like that. We were a unionist county with a high number of slaves.
Yes.
Of course, like you said, it's much deeper than that. But could you say anything more about that, just from a historical standpoint, that really interests me? So you have any other knowledge about that type of thing that was going on back then and that's misrepresented today?
Well, I mean, the main thing that was always taught to me when I was a child was it was the North versus the South to end slavery. But when I did my digging and my research, I'm like, okay, you have 5 states in the Union that had slaves throughout the entire war. Like you say, certain counties may have been more Union aligned. It was much deeper. I mean, they say that people like Robert E. Lee, they're racist and they shouldn't be honored. But Robert E. Lee, he was going to be the Union commander, but he was from Virginia, so he did not want to go against his own state. So a lot of these things are just kind of lost in history, and I think that having a deeper understanding of history is much more important than just some of these, some things that people want to get out there is the truth that are not the truth. All right?
So you talked a little bit about changing to be a conservative. So tell us about that experience. Why did you become a conservative? What appealed to you about that ideology?
That's a great question. Now, like I was telling you, my dad kept telling me all these things about this civil rights leader, this civil rights movement, and he kept asking me over and over and over again, so it just kind of sparked my interest to do my own research rather than just what he was telling me on these road trips. So really, I just started to become self-educated and not so much from the school system because they did not teach me most of what I know now. I just became more self-educated from the curiosity that was sparked by my father. And I say once I got to be an adult, I say like right around 2012, I had my own business. I still do, but back then I was struggling really hard. And I still had this leftist mindset as far as my voting. And I'm looking around me, you know, I voted for Barack Obama the first time. I'm like, hope and change. man, this isn't really going the way that I thought it would go. I thought that we'd be flying cars in the street. I thought that's what it would be, but a lot of my friends went bankrupt. I know 3 of my personal friends that went Chapter 11 during that time, like 2011. At the same time, I'm struggling. And a lot of my friends were together like, what are we gonna do? What happened to the economy? It was doing pretty well under Bush. Now, I'm not saying Bush was fantastic, but it was doing well. Here comes Obama and these policies, and it didn't work out. So it forced me to go further with what I already had in my mind about doing my own independent research and finding out what's going on. So I did so much digging. I found a lot of people. Like Todd said, I found Walter Williams, Thomas Sowell. I found a lot of economists, and it just kind of, I started to put 2 and 2 together. And then I just went further and further down the rabbit hole. Then I'm like, okay, what I'm hearing over here makes sense. And one thing I did was I challenged myself to go outside of my box, right? So everyone always told me, don't listen to Rush Limbaugh. He's a racist. He doesn't like black people. But I never actually heard him for myself to make my own mind up. So I turned him on one day and I'm like, okay, what's the problem? I don't see anything he says here that's wrong, that I disagree with. So I listened to him more and more. That became my everyday podcast, really, Rush Limbaugh. So once I got exposed to that new information, that's what really kind of clicked in my mind. Okay, match your conservative social views to your political views. Been that way ever since. All right.
So as you kind of went through this conversion, what's your reception been among liberals or among, other people?
Oh, okay. So what do you mean, like as far as how they see me, how the liberals see? Oh man, that's a great question, because when I was on the left, I'd be kind of, in some of these online forums, I'd be trolling conservative people, and and what I always got back from the conservatives was, you're not understanding what's going on, do some information, read some books. It was never a racist thing I got in return. But then when I got on this side, the racism, it's through the roof. Every day, all types of stuff. And it's like, okay, I see what's going on here. You're trying to it's, what they call that, projection? You're doing exactly to me what you said the other side will do to me. But the other side never did it when I was on the left. And they don't do it now that I'm on the right. It's you guys that are doing it. And now it's kind of become mainstream. People get on TV and talk about it. When we went to the White House, it was a Young Black Leadership Summit. We had like 500 young black people in the White House when Trump was in office. And the commentary from MSNBC, CNN, they hate themselves. This is on TV now. They hate themselves. They don't know who they are. They put MAGA hats on them. They paid them. All types of stuff. That the racism has been through the roof. But now I understand. See, I know I made the right decision. I know I'm on the correct way now, because on the right, nothing but love. Everybody's smiling. Everybody's nice. I mean, it's just like a love fest. So I'm in the right place for sure. But on the other side, man, I'm glad I left when I left.
Amen.
All right. I'm right here.
Okay, I have a question. When it came to slavery during the Civil War, were there any southern states that the slaves were free? And were there any states up in the northern states that still held on to slavery?
Oh, that's a good question. Now, there were some people that may have been slaves that were able to gain their freedom. There were some black slave owners. There were native slave owners. As a matter of fact, slavery ended under the federal government in December of '65, but it did not end until the following year under the Choctaw Nation, like 6 months later. So that was going on. People don't really know about that, but it's just history. It just is what it is. In the North, it was more segregation. Okay, here's a story. When West Virginia became a state, they seceded from Virginia during the war. So they went from the Confederacy into the Union during the war. I think this is 1863 when this happened. And when they did that, soldiers from Ohio in the Union came to West Virginia and said, hey, you know what? If any of your slaves escape, we're going to bring them back because we have an anti-fugitive slave law in Ohio. So yes, it's a free state, but can you go to Ohio? That's why the Underground Railroad existed in the North and the South, because either way, if you're in the South and you were an escapee, that was a problem. If you were in the North and you were an escapee, they may want to bring you back. They may want to get a bounty for you. So it took people in the North and the South, just regular people, to facilitate people gaining their freedom. The slavery thing, that was more of a rich person thing and also a political thing. But
Right.
average people, they did not really engage in it.
So probably the percentage of slave owners is a very, very low amount of people, right?
1%, 3%. I'm not exactly
But
sure.
I heard, yeah, that's what I heard.
Yeah, it was very low because it wasn't a thing that everyone could do. You had to be able to have a lot of money to do that. All right.
Yeah, Anthony, I know President Trump, one of the good things, among many good things that he did, one of the good things he did was increase the number of minority votes that he got as a candidate for president. But it's still abysmal compared to the population at large. What can we do as a Republican Party to reach out to our conservative African American brothers and sisters who we know are out there? We know they're there. What can we do to better reach them?
Well, I would say things like this are a good start. Just being able to hear history from a real point of view. But what you don't want to get involved with is some of the trying to appease the left. You don't want to do that. Stay who you are. Stay who you are. Be who you are. You know, you guys are great people. Just show that. That's what you really got to do. But the reason why it's such a high percentage of black folks voting for the Democratic Party is because of the welfare state, quite frankly. Because prior to 1960, it was more voter parity. It was kind of like half and half in the black community. Maybe like 1940, it was like that. But ever since, you know, Lyndon Baines Johnson, Great Society, all these welfare programs, it's shifted to the Democrats because everything, there's so many freebies going on. There's so much free, and then that has also caused the family to collapse. 1960, 80% of the black community had two-parent married households before they had a baby. And now it's almost the reverse with 75% single-parent households in the black community having children. That's sponsored by the welfare state. So if you really want to make a dent in it, stay who you are, stay to your principles. And if I could be a king and I could just rule by fiat, I would say eliminate that welfare state because that's subsidizing all of these problems. All right?
Yeah, I like a statement. Naturally, I'm not from here, from New York. I grew up in a public housing project, Red Hook, Brooklyn.
Red Hook, all right.
Red Hook. So, tough area, back in the 50s and the 60s. So my social experience was, my first friend was Andrew O'Brien. My second friend was Brown, black kid. So I grew up in that atmosphere, and that, growing up in the projects, it gave me a sense who were the good folks, no matter what skin color they were, and who were the people you don't hang out with. So I carried that into my adult life, and that was the filter that I used when to judge certain things. And when you grew up in a tough area, it's like going to a school of hard knocks. You know what's nonsense and what is true.
Right.
So I can understand where you're coming from. So where I grew up, my father's a Democrat. Being Catholic and being Democrat is back in the city. It's synonymous. So then I grew up, got married and all that. But then I saw the fallacies. Some people are well-intentioned. But what we have to do now, am I looking at it, you have to go beyond good intentions. What is the result of your philosophy, right? It's like an experiment. Here's what I believe, my certain principles, these are the results. Okay, we could judge results. The other side of that, this is my principles, and apply those principles. Which I get the better results for the individuals involved, and not go into rhetoric, but like you said, stand up for your principles, because I read Thomas Sowell and Walter Williams, who just passed away, and I read those guys through the years, and they were brave men because they were going against the code. I mean, Thomas Sowell, he said he was on a plane with Williams, he said, you know, if the plane goes, the two black conservatives are gone, you know? So I admire you for that, because I think the minorities, and I'm Puerto Rican, right? The Democratic Party has done a good PR campaign.
Yes.
They say without us, you ain't gonna do anything. But I remember my father took my father in Puerto Rico on a farm, and they were hardworking, basically similarly they were mountain people. They grew sugarcane, right? But they were hardworking people that had certain principles. And I think the Democratic Party, in a sense, has betrayed the American dream. That's what I feel.
Yes.
They betrayed that, and they put this rhetoric and feel good, I'm for you, and all of this. But I say, okay, I'm going to take you at your word. But then I look at the last 30 or 40 years, where are the results? Like you mentioned about the black family. Now
Downhill.
think about it. When I'm back in Red Hook, the two men that affected me, Mr. Brown and Mr. Harry, were black men. Mr. Harry was a Buffalo Soldier. When I met him, he was in the mid-70s. Okay? Men of integrity and character. And I said, you know, these are the guys that helped me. I knew these guys. These were good men. And they loved America. And all of a sudden, you get this nonsense, bunch of jabonis talking. I said, they're talking garbage, man. They're talking garbage.
Right.
So, anyway, I'll end with that.
All right, we good, everybody? Okay, back in the back.
Is he gonna go on your show?
Hey, you need to. Gotta be on the show.
When you have callers and ask about reparations that AOC is pushing and a lot of Democrats are pushing, what are your thoughts on that? What do you say? And I know kind of like everybody's anything, we have to get off of this mantra that Republicans are racist and hate everybody else who's not.
Reparations, that's a talking point from the Democratic Party that they'll never do. They'll never ever do it because, so it's kind of it's something that they try to campaign on, but they're not going to actually do. Because anytime they ask them throughout the campaign cycle, hey, reparations, how do you feel about that? What we're going to do is study. We're going to look into it. A study, how long has it been? I mean, what are we going to actually study? You know, 20 years ago almost, I mean, what did we study? They're not going to do it. It's just a way to just try to just dangle in the carrot. That's all. It's a way to try and get more votes. They don't really do much to get votes, and they don't have to, quite frankly. If you get 90% of the vote without reparations, what's the point in doing it? So it doesn't make a difference. They just use that as a way to try to entice people. And also, what I call virtue signal. They want to tell their friends, hey, we're virtuous, we're great people, we're going to put reparations out there. They'll never do it with just saying it, just talking about it gives them social credit in their social circles. That's what it's all about. So anytime anybody asks me that, I give them that. And it's really hard for them to refute it because I say, hey, they always talk about it and they never do it. So what's going to change in 2020, 2024, 2028? Never.
I'm Alan Carter.
All right, nice to meet you.
Yes, sir. How about Anthony Logan here?